My name is Kate, and I'm a librarian at the University of Minnesota Libraries, and I'm here with Cody. And Cody will introduce himself in just a moment. But Cody, my question for you is, what advice do you have for new graduate students about setting up a research and writing practice?
Cool, thanks, Kate. Yeah, so I'm Cody Hennessy. I'm the journalism and digital media librarian at the university. So I work with the School of Journalism and Mass Communication, and then a lot of students who are working on different digital scholarship questions. So for folks getting started as graduate students and thinking about research especially, um, one thing, like I'll start very broad and then get a little more specific, but for me, it's really helpful to think about your attention and what you want to be paying attention to when you're doing research. So as a graduate student, you're going to be getting a lot of really good advice from your discipline about what you should be paying attention to, what you should be reading, scholars you should know about, and you want to follow that advice, of course. But also, as a scholar sort of developing, you really want to figure out what do you want to pay time and attention to, and make sure that that's in line with what you care about. With this is if you're successful as a scholar, these are things you're going to be paying a lot of time and attention to over time, and so making sure it's in line with your values, that you're curious about it, and sometimes those can be in tension with what the discipline is telling you want to pay attention to, right? So what methods are interesting to you, what sources are interesting to you, and then figuring out how do you merge that with what you know about the discipline. And so just sort of giving yourself that space. One way to do that, and maybe like a little more specific way of thinking about it is, and especially in the context of a university setting where you're going to get more and more familiar with your department, which is really critical. But there are also, like, universities are very bureaucratic and siloed institutions, and it will really help you to go outside of your silo of the department over time and get to know these experts from all over the university. And so I'm really familiar with folks in the libraries. So everyone has a subject librarian. And this can be as simple as reaching out, finding out who is your subject librarian, reach out to them. You don't have to have a specific question. You can just introduce yourself, see if they're available to chat, get a coffee, and share about what you're interested in. A lot of times the subject librarian will know a lot about what we have that could help you, databases, online resources, or print materials. We might have archives, and they might connect you with an archivist who could be a big help. So like creating those conversations, I think, is a really important part of the research practice. And then outside of the libraries, there's also a lot of other resources for help. The ones that come to mind that I intersect with a lot would be through the DASH program, the Digital Arts, Sciences, and Humanities. This is a sort of place you can go to for any questions about technology and how it intersects with your research. So whether you're doing computational methods that are really sort of heavy lifting, or if you just want to make a website to sort of highlight your publications or to put together an online CV, Dash can help with that. So a lot of experts around the university who can try to help sort of have that conversation and guide you, as well as the folks in your department.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have also for new graduate students who are beginning to think about the idea of publishing
Yeah.
and doing research and writing towards that goal of publishing?
Yeah. There are, again, a lot of experts. So in the library, there's publishing department folks who can go really deep on that. Another sort of tier that comes to mind that I'm more familiar with in the libraries is there are a lot of folks who can help out, whether through workshops or consultations, with how do you keep track of the sources you're using. And that can be through citation management software like Zotero or Mendeley or EndNote, where you're keeping track of literally the scholarly articles and the book chapters and the YouTube videos and sort of everything that you're using as sources. It'll help you organize that, create citation lists around sort of different research projects that you're working on. Those can be really helpful tools as you're beginning large projects. It's a little harder to come to the tool at the very end of like a big dissertation or a big master's project. And so that's something you might want to investigate early. And then also, if your research uses research data of any kind, there's data services folks in the library who can do similar things, talk about best practices for how do you collect and organize that data, how do you share it in a way that others will be able to reproduce or replicate your work. We have Drum, sort of university repository where they can publish that data for you, which is a really good thing. Sometimes it's required by publishers, and other times it's really helpful as you're submitting a paper to say, here's the data set I worked from. It's published and preserved on the Drum website. And so there's a lot of help around sort of organizing and keeping track of all the stuff that you're using so that others can make sense of your work.
Great. Thanks so much. All right, Cody, I have a last question for you, and that is,
Okay.
you mentioned, again, reaching out and having conversations, and I love that concept. And I'm just wondering if you could briefly tell us about what do your conversations look like, or how does it look when you meet with graduate students?
Well, ideally, it's not looking like this quite as much frequently, but usually it's around a coffee. That's probably the reason I'm a librarian. I want to get together with people and drink coffee and talk about ideas that they have. So now it's on Zoom, drinking coffee in my case.